Thanks for joining. I'm Haseeb Malik from Qwhery. Today I want to walk you through a common challenge many organizations are facing as they work towards NG911 readiness. Most teams today are able to generate validation results, but those results often create more work instead of less. You end up growing a backlog of issues without a clear, repeatable way to resolve them. The real challenge isn't identifying problems. It's turning those findings into an efficient, scalable workflow that the teams can actually execute day to day. In this short demo, I'll show you what that looks like in practice and how you can move from validation to true NG911 operational readiness. Let's start by looking at the current state. Before we dive into that, it is important to understand why Qwhery is here. We are a municipal-focused GIS technology company and a proud Esri business partner. But more importantly, we are specialists in the gap between validation and remediation. Today, almost any team can generate a list of findings. That's the easy part. The harder part, the part that often stalls progress, is organizing the complex work that follows. We provide the operational layer that turns those findings into a clear, repeatable, and trackable path to readiness. We aren't here to replace your environment, we are here to support it so your team can finally move from knowing what is wrong in your address management and to making it right. And today I'm going to be doing a quick walkthrough of our platform and show you what it really looks like in practice. The goal here is not to show you every feature, but give you a feel for how this fits into your day-to-day NENA NG911 workflow and how it helps reduce some of that manual effort that typically comes with this kind of work. So what you're looking at here is our main workspace and our main platform homepage. And the way to think about this is we're trying to bring everything into one place. Instead of jumping between spreadsheets, GIS tools, emails, and notes, you're going to have a single environment where you can review issues, understand what needs attention, and actually move forward. On the right-hand side here is where you receive the login, and you have the ability to choose whether you want to log in with our Qwhery Cloud platform or with the integration you've set up. So for example, here, our ArcGIS Online. I'm going to go ahead and log in with my ArcGIS Online. And I want to highlight here the ability to directly connect with your ArcGIS Online system. And so this makes it really easy for you to access all of your existing layers. And this will directly connect back to your NG911 data model that you bring into our Qwhery platform. So I'm going to go ahead as part of this demo and go to the east side of Canada in a town called Fredericton. And what's important to note here is everything has been pulled directly from the open source data set. And so when you go in and connect your ArcGIS Online, you can see here on my screen to the left, you have the ability to sort by layers in your content, your organization, or if you're sharing data amongst groups. So with this layer selected and the various types of feature layers within it, such as street lines, provisioning polygons, and even address points, you can visually see some of these layers on the map. But what I'd like to have you turn your attention to is on the top sort of panel bar that we have here on our NG911 layer mapper. I want to highlight one thing very early on is how we can directly connect this to whatever NG911 versioning standard is in place now. And this will include the mandatory layers on the left, the strongly recommended layers such as your counties, incorporated municipalities, and as well as some recommended layers that you and your GIS team could work on. For today's demo, we're going to be looking at address points and road center lines. So I'm going to go ahead here and focus on the site structure address points and go ahead and select our point layer. What's cool here is you can validate your fields, and so we'll go ahead and validate. And immediately you'll notice that from this data set, which oftentimes is the reality for a lot of municipalities and jurisdictions, that a lot of the NENA standards are missing or they're not in the valid type that they need to be. And so each specific finding here is tied back to a specific feature layer. For example, the road center lines and other boundaries as well. So you're able to see what layer that this belongs to, what feature is impacted, and what specifically needs to be addressed as well. So going back to the structures and addresses, what I want to also highlight is now we can go ahead and auto match some of these fields. And so what our system will do is try and match whatever existing data you have directly to the fields that are part of the NENA NG911 standards. And so that field matching has completed. And again, maybe some of our additional fields have now been validated. Now for the ones that are still missing, as you can see here where my mouse is hovering, we can click on this little icon which will auto match the fields. And so we're going to go ahead and auto match these fields. Now, before I do that, I want to highlight the ability to manually match fields as well. So if you wanted to match this field by a certain field within your data set, you have the ability to do that as well. Now, if you're curious about what a field may mean or what kind of information is required under NENA standards, we have our My NENA Assistant, which I just popped up by clicking on this little icon on the bottom right. Now in here is where you can ask anything related to the NENA standards. So if you were curious about what an incorporated municipality means, you can ask, what does this NENA field capture, as an example? And the assistant will shortly provide you back the exact response and context from the NENA standards about that field. So that field is also known as incorporated municipality, and this is a required field under the NENA NG911 GIS data model. So it's used to represent the geographic city and so on. And this can be for any questions related to the NENA standards where our NENA assistant can go ahead and answer those for you. So going back here, I've shown you the ability to load in the layers, how you can validate what you have now from your data sets. But now I'm going to show you how you can actually fill in those gaps directly in our NG911 layer mapper. You're going to click this little icon to auto match the fields, and I'll go ahead and continue. And now I'm going to go ahead and actually auto fix these fields. So in here, when I click this button, this will highlight which fields are missing, have incorrect types, or maybe they exceed a certain allowance in terms of their field length. And so these new fields will be added, or potentially fields that could be adjusted in certain cases as well. And I'm not going to go ahead and click continue right now, as I've already processed this data. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the new data source. One thing I want to mention is we have the ability to also capture certain fields like submission status, the date of a submission, any type of sort of custom text field, and then a unique record ID for tracking purposes as well. So our system, you can click that button to add in these new fields to track any type of feature level submissions as well. I'm going to go ahead and close this and open up my data set that I've already went ahead and processed. And so I'm going to select this one right here. And if I go back to our NG911 layer mapper and we go back to our site and address points, you'll notice that there's actually been a check mark. So these layers have been validated. So if I click validate, you'll notice that all of their statuses show as valid. And now that these layers have been validated, we can actually go back to our data validation. And so this is where it becomes important to note that we actually keep everything grounded in your existing data structure, but as well as the NENA standards. And so in here with our data validation, we can go ahead and select one of our layers, like the address layer that we just validated. And this is where you'll notice that right away, we're not just spitting out raw errors, but instead, we're representing this in a way that's much more operational. So on the top right at the top, you'll clearly see sort of what your issues are, how it was identified, and the key attributes tied to it as well. And so as I scroll through, all the relevant information is surfaced in one place. All of your errors, maybe how many features are associated with the errors. So this one here, the duplicate address as an example, there's multiple. And you can review everything in here directly as well. So I'm going to go ahead and click this Edit All button here. And this will provide a table format of all the information in one place. Now you'll notice that all the fields here are selected blue because these are actually fields that are under the NINA standards. But if you wanted to see your original fields from your data set, you also have the ability to do that, making it easier for you to reference anything that you might need to. We can also view these issues on a map. So I'm going to click on Show Map button. And what this will do is this will automatically select all of the issues that I've captured from that error. And I think this is where the key shift is. We're going from validation to now a workflow, right? So most teams already have the validation. That's not the hard part. The challenge is what happens here. So what we're doing is we're taking those findings and then turning them into something that can actually be worked on. So for each record here, you can view it on a map. You can also go ahead and update it. So on the left here, I'm going to click this little edit icon. And right away, you'll notice that some of these fields are going to start to populate automatically. And so, for example, the city, which is Fredericton, or we might populate the county and state. So our system has the ability in some of the highlighted fields in orange to automatically populate certain geographic information or data fields as part of the NINA standards. So if this needs to be handled by specifically someone on your team, you can assign them certain types of, issues as part of your daily validation to focus on. But then in here, you can also repeat this process for feature level editing. And so if I go in here and validate this specific issue, what we're going to do is we're going to run just a single validation on this edit that we may have changed or made. And you can see those errors still exist because we haven't updated anything at the moment. And again, we can also highlight these selected fields. And so you can see here that we're missing the address number. And so this field got highlighted, as well as something else like the street name, which we do have the ability to provide drop-downs for based on the NINA standards as well. One thing I want to mention as well in here is, again, might be another case where if you don't understand what this information means, you can go back to your NINA assistant and ask about this field. And this is where our NINA assistant comes in handy if you're trying to understand why this field may be conditional, what are potential inputs, and so on as part of the NINA GIS data model. I'm going to go ahead and now show you also the ability to not only change this at a feature level, but you can also batch process this. So on the top right, we're going to click this batch tool, and we're going to click on batch data update tool. What we'll do now is we're going to have the ability to also run a batch on updating multiple fields, or if you wanted to go ahead and let's say update your date updated to an autofill, and we can set the time zone as an example, or if you wanted to go in here and update your street name, let's say you added in a new neighborhood, and this new neighborhood was King Street South, King Street as an example. And you can also apply this to update your fields through a batch process. And this can be done for all of your layers. And you also have the ability to bring in other layers. So as part of your GIS connection to ArcGIS Online, you can bring in other data sets to help fill in any types of gaps. And if I go back to sort of the main list here, so I'll go ahead and just close this off. I'm going to go back to the main list here. So this is where you can kind of see how things start to scale. So you're not just working on one issue at a time. You're actually managing a queue of work. And so you have the ability to start identifying patterns, see which types of issues are coming up more often, and understand maybe where your team is spending time as well. And what's important to note here is for most municipalities, there isn't often a large team, and if oftentimes if it's one person or a small group managing this, we make it really easy for you to also go in here and run validations on certain types of layers. So if you had someone working on just your, let's say your city boundary, they can run their validation again just on that layer, or maybe all of your other wards and other layers as well. One thing I do want to mention is you have the ability to download these reports in a PDF format as well, or an Excel format. And if you'd like to share this project, you also have the ability, for example, this test project here, to email this out to anyone on your team. And so other staff, junior staff, can come in here and work through items confidentially. And then maybe you might have a senior staff who is able to oversee the different changes and focus on certain things that need rebuilding immediately. So everything is structured to be clear, guided, and easy to follow. It's about turning findings into actions and making that action something your team can actually manage over time. And part of managing your data sets over time under the NINA standards is also handling any type of new addresses that might be added. So if I click on our create a new address feature, and as part of this example, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add this address outside of the boundary to show you how our system can also capture any type of sort of geospatial standards that have to be maintained and followed as well. So not only are we doing field checks and attribute checks, but there's also a topology check being done here as well. And so I've added in this address, and you can see our system is starting to populate some of the information itself already. Now, I've purposely added in this address outside of the boundary, and if we go ahead and validate this field as an example, you'll notice that we will right away get an error for its topology error. And so right here, that this address, it's outside of the primary PSAF boundary. And again, the ability to capture not only your field errors and attribute errors, but as well as your topology errors as well when adding in new addresses or other features like street center lines. And that will conclude our demo for today. We've seen the tools, but what we're really discussing today is a shift in your operating model. We are moving past the limitations of a standalone application and into a unified operating model. Imagine a single place where findings, remediation activity, and progress are tracked together. This doesn't just empower counties and municipalities to do their best work, but it gives larger jurisdictions the clarity to lead with the evidence and to support. The goal isn't just to find errors, it's to give your team uninterrupted continuity between validation cycles. By removing the friction from the process, you aren't just managing data, you're accelerating NG911 readiness for the residents within your jurisdictions. We've explored the gap between data and action, and we've seen how a unified operating model can bridge it. Now we want to hear from you as we consider the path ahead. Please feel free to reach out to us, as your insights will help to ensure that when we move forward, that we are doing this in a clear and shared purpose. Thank you.